Thank you for taking the time to watch our second Journey of Discovery webinar. This time we're focused on the opportunities around improving realtor professionalism. My name is Adam Lerner, and I've recorded this screencast after the fact to share with you the presentation that we gave during the webinar on June the 19th. During the webinar itself, we asked a number of polling questions of the participants. We thought it would be worthwhile to share some of those results that you might be interested in. One of those polling questions was, over the next 5 years, do you think perceptions of realtor professionalism will improve, stay the same, or decline? And you'll see from these results that the majority thought it would either improve or stay the same, which is generally a positive or optimistic outlook for the future of realtor professionalism. In terms of the way that we structured the Maestro Conference engagement is we had a 20-minute presentation, we had a 10-minute joint Q&A where people could ask questions using the chat window, and then we had a 30-minute breakout group discussion using the Maestro Conference interactivity. We mentioned this because for those of you that are going to join us at the next webinar on July the 10th, this will be a similar structure that we'll be using then. This exploration of realtor professionalism is one of 5 significant forces of industry change we've identified during Journey of Discovery research. For those of you who are unfamiliar with BCREA's Journey of Discovery, it is a year-long process to build the data points on the future of the realtor over the next 5 years, and how organized real estate can support a more sustainable and thriving industry for BC realtors, brokers, and organized real estate in BCREA's upcoming strategic plan. With that intro, let's turn to our topic of realtor professionalism. Why you should care about realtor professionalism. Perceptions of realtor professionalism affect everyone in the industry, regardless of your own performance. High perceptions of professionalism will make it easier for everyone, and conversely, negative perceptions will mean that realtors will have to work that much harder to overcome consumer biases. The vast majority of realtors are proud of their profession. Realtors are integral to their communities and deliver value, sometimes 24/7, to meet client needs. Realtors also recognize the significance of professionalism for the industry and consistently vote it to be an issue of top priority for organized real estate. And yet, public perceptions of realtors paint a more disconcerting picture. You can see this polling data that we've referenced at multiple points in our slide presentation, which comes from Gallup, where they looked at, over the course of 40 years, different professions, one of which examined here is a real estate agent, in polling in 2- and 3-year intervals to see how different professions ranked on the questions of honesty and integrity. And at no time over the past 40 years have our honesty and ethical standards been ranked very high or high by more than 20% of the respondents. And a greater proportion rated the profession very low or low compared to those who rated it very high or high in every year but one, which is particularly disconcerting. Low perceptions are not unique to Canada or the US, though, for that matter. Similar findings we found in Australia as well as the UK. So we ask you to think about this question. How do these perceptions compare to your personal experiences with realtor, honesty, and ethics? As you consider that, let's dig into professionalism a bit more. In talking with different groups across the province about how it could be that there's such high levels of satisfaction with realtors, particularly from buyers, but at the same time we have low perceptions of our honesty and ethics, how could those things be matched together? So we have included this slide to dig into that question much more carefully by looking at the specific research. First of all, some attributes drive satisfaction while others drive dissatisfaction, meaning that there's some attributes that contribute greatly to an overall satisfaction scores, while some attributes may have no effect on it. While the very satisfied group is somewhat high based on other market research data, sellers seem much more dissatisfied than buyers do. We also found that a lack of professionalism likely drives dissatisfaction, but a high level of professionalism doesn't increase satisfaction, meaning, as we had presented in our secondary research report early in the Journey of Discovery process, that honesty is table stakes. People expect that professions that they deal with are going to be honest, and it's only in the dishonesty that would contribute to dissatisfaction because of this aspect that it should be a standard norm for working with any professional. Low levels of professionalism, combined with other factors identified in our research, create a significant threat to the future of the realtor. This is not a new topic to ORE, brokers, and realtors. We do believe that we can only address this collectively, and not just through willingness, but by a concentrated, coordinated, and an enduring effort. By looking at other industries and research, we've identified a number of opportunities that over the long term could turn the realtor professionalism tide. Then we went to another poll. What is the level of urgency for BC organized real estate to improve realtor professionalism? And you saw overwhelmingly the vast majority of the people that were on the call believed that it was urgent. So in looking at this polling data from Gallup, we set out to find another profession who had transformed their perception of honesty and ethics. We discovered that over the past 2 decades, engineer honesty and ethics increased 25 points, from a low of 45% to a high of 70%. And while the 45% marker is obviously significantly higher than the honesty and ethical attributes that are given to realtors at any point in history, it's this differential that they were able to achieve over a number of years that we were really interested in, which was very unique compared to even many other highly ranked professions, which didn't show much change over time. So we were wondering, what does engineering have to teach us about professionalism? First of all, engineering had a watershed event, and this event happened first in 1907 and then again in 1916 with the collapse of the Quebec Bridge. In 1907 it killed 85 people. In 1916 it killed another 15 people. The culmination of these 2 events set in motion a number of actors who called for radical reforms in the engineering profession, from education to standards of quality, etc. And one of the results of the individual efforts, and particularly what actually developed out of Eastern Canada and Toronto, was a ritual that we all recognize now, which is the iron ring. This iron ring is given at a ceremony where an oath is taken called the obligation, where when an engineer finishes their education, they say a standard oath that is what the ethics are that they are sworn by for the rest of their professional life, and they wear that iron ring as a symbol of that commitment. We also saw that part of this reason for continued professional advancement is that there are individuals and organizations out there that are working for continuous improvement, and this is remarkable to us, that even though they have a 70% score, say, for honesty and ethics, that it's not enough for some individuals. And in this case, the organization that we looked at is one called Big Beacon, who issued a manifesto, which I would encourage you to look at, about how the status quo is not good enough for an engineer. And in fact, we need to train a whole new engineer because of the technological and other factors that are going into what it means to actually operate in the profession. And so we ask you to consider, will it take a watershed event to transform realtor professionalism? As you consider that question, let's move on to the discussion about quality. Real estate does not have a comprehensive list of outcomes that define whether a realtor, broker, or organized real estate is successful. Yes, we have gut measures such as whether a deal closed, success in pointing out faults with a property, having negotiated a better deal, etc. But without consistent measures across the industry, neither the profession or our current or potential clients can quantify a picture of success. What we find is that industries who have transformed professionalism do so in part by a quantitative approach to quality. That means continuing to improve the picture of what professionalism looks like over time. And part of that is standards. Of course, standards are not new to real estate. We've had a code of ethics for over 100 years, and different bodies in organized real estate have been pursuing more effective standards. Yet none of these mention quality, nor do they have the kind of inspirational quality that we found in some other consumer organizations. We'd like to spend a few minutes using the rental company Airbnb as an example. Airbnb recently went through a massive transformation where they realized that their business wasn't just a rental company, meaning providing a place for people to stay in various parts of the world for one or a couple nights at a different interval, but rather that they were in the hospitality business. They weren't a rental agency. They needed to think about their entire brand and the entire experience for their consumers. And they had the challenge that they have hosts that are all over the globe in all different kinds of facilities that they live in that are delivering essentially the Airbnb experience. They knew that they needed to create consistency across the globe for all of the Airbnb guests. So they have had unrelenting effort over the past year or so to develop hospitality standards. You can see here the mobile app they developed for their hosts to share those hospitality standards, which you can link to from this slide deck. They also ended up developing a hospitality lab in Dublin where they can actually bring in hosts for training and watch hosts to learn how they can improve their support of hosts in order to create a more consistent client experience. And so we ask, could our own quality movement help transform real estate professionalism? As you consider that, let's talk about qualifications and credentials. Social scientist Robert Cialdini did research on the question of what makes certain professions more trusted than others. One of his findings was that those professions where clients do not have a clear understanding of the expertise required actually trust the expertise given to them less. Based on an experiment comparing why stroke patients would follow the advice of their physicians but ignore the advice of their physical therapists, Cialdini determined that patients who were familiar with the background and training of their physicians, but the patients knew little about the credentials of their physical therapist who were urging them to exercise. By just having the therapy director display all the awards, diplomas, and certifications of her staff on the walls of the therapy rooms, that hospital was able to increase at-home compliance 34%. And as it turns out, Cialdini ran a similar experiment inside a real estate brokerage. By simply having the receptionist mention the realtor's years of experience before patching them through, the brokerage was able to increase appointments by 20% and contracts by 15%. We found that consumers are almost entirely in the dark about the distinct credibility attributes of the realtor. Number one, consumers don't understand the distinction between a realtor and a licensee. Number two, they do not know about infractions generally or specifically how to report them. Number three, they know little to nothing about organized real estate. And number four, they don't know about E&O protections. If we are to display our credentials, we will likely find that the trust will increase, as will perceptions of professionalism. And if it became even harder to become a realtor, we would likely see a further jump. So we ask you to consider, would higher barriers to becoming a realtor increase quality and perceived professionalism? As you consider the relationship between quality and perceived professionalism, let's move on to compensation. As discussed in earlier research reports, we anticipate compensation will come under increasing pricing pressure in the near future. We already see a significant fragmentation in commission models and anticipate further fragmentation. The relevance of compensation for the topic of professionalism is that there is a direct correlation between compensation methods in both quality outcomes and perceived professionalism. We've looked specifically at the professional shifts in healthcare, particularly in the US, as it moved from a pay procedure to pay for performance, or P for P. In other words, those outcomes we discussed a few slides earlier are being used to determine at least part of the compensation package through incentives. And this isn't just happening in healthcare. One of the fastest growing real estate companies in the US, Redfin, has salaried its agents and compensates them based on customer satisfaction. It probably comes as no surprise that Redfin agents receive a 97% satisfaction rating, significantly due to this incentive structure. And Redfin has data that shows that top performing Redfin agents actually earn more than commission-based agents in traditional brokerages. Increased quality plus greater income seems like a winning formula for everybody. So we ask you to consider the question, would perceptions of realtor professionalism improve by adopting a fee-for-service model or alternative compensation models? And while you're thinking of that, let's move on to collective enforcement, or what we talk about in terms of monitoring professionalism. Most of what we've talked about so far is proactive strategies that can shape quality on the front end. It's also important to consider strategies that monitor and audit quality reactively. Who is responsible for monitoring and auditing the quality of our profession? Well, part of that responsibility clearly rests with organized real estate. From the Real Estate Council of British Columbia to regional real estate boards, realtors and consumers can file complaints on breaches of legal and ethical conduct. While this is possible in theory, it is difficult in execution. From an audit we did looking at various board sites, it is clear that the forms are hard to find, the filing processes are lengthy, at times 3 to 4 page long PDFs. It requires you to print and mail, etc. In other words, in terms of what we talked about in consumer autonomy, there's a great deal of friction that is potentially preventing those that should be filing complaints from doing so. So we were inspired to look at the startup Ushahidi, who figured out a way to collect incident reports using SMS messages or text messages, from reporting violence during elections in Kenya to civic outages from hurricanes. You can see what this kind of reporting interface actually looks like, and this is for consumers, where you can, based on a geographic map, you can see where the greatest concentration of reports have come from. They also have set it up so that you can actually create a taxonomy, as you see on the right side, of different types of reporting, so that it makes it much easier and much more transparent for consumers to be able to understand the types of reports that have been made and where. And what we were particularly compelled by was that they've made their platform open source, meaning that any organization, including any organization real estate, can use the technology platform that they've built to do this kind of reporting with very little additional cost and customization. Another example that probably most people are familiar with is 311, which is not just swept across Vancouver, but also across many cities in North America. By creating an easy-to-remember number supported by robust call center infrastructure, 311 creates a level of transparency and action previously impossible by cities. Vancouver alone consolidated 550 different telephone numbers into a single contact center call number that handles now 45,000 inquiries per month. Inquiries even get a tracking number like a FedEx package, and they publish the data publicly to hold themselves accountable to their outcome measures. So we ask you to consider the question, how can an easier realtor complaints process increase professionalism? In closing, incremental changes are unlikely to result in the sweeping changes we would all like to see in perceptions of realtor professionalism. To measurably improve, we need an industry transformation in our commitment to professionalism. The opportunity is immense if we can collectively rise to the challenge and grab it. We want to invite everyone who's watching this to join us for our next webinar, which is on Realtor Match, or the future of realtor real estate lead generation. That is on July 10th. The link is here. Please register in advance, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for viewing. See you soon.